Greetings, Grade 12 learners. I hope that I find you well. For this video, you will need the NSC June for the year 2022, and we are going to be focusing on paper 2. Let us look at the questions that we have. In this paper, we have a number of questions that we can practice on as we prepare for our exam. But one of the interesting questions that I found is question 1.2, which is your creditors reconciliation. All right, so we're going to follow the instructions of the examiner as we attempt this question. In this question, it requires us to do the creditors recon, but then there are specific instructions that the examiner gave us. But before you do that, you have to understand this first part of the question. It says, Money Supermarket is owned by Money Bloom. You have to understand that as we are doing this creditors reconciliation, we therefore become Money Supermarket. So whenever you see Money Supermarket, that becomes us. All right, that becomes us. And he says the business buys goods on credit from Louis wholesalers. So Louis wholesalers becomes our suppliers. So therefore we can just call this part them, so that when we read, we clearly understand who we are and who our creditors are. Use the table provided in the answer book to show the changes to the creditors ledger account of Louis wholesalers in the books of Money Supermarket and the statement of account received from Louis wholesalers to take into account differences identified. Indicate with a plus or minus next to each amount. Very important. When the examiner gives us such instructions, we need to follow these instructions, that for any change, we need to indicate with a plus or a minus to show either we are adding the amount or we are subtracting a particular amount. All right, so let us therefore go. In 1.2.2, that is another question, and I'm going to discuss that with you. But first, let's attempt 1.2.1. I will go further down the question, and you will see we have the creditors ledger of Money Supermarket. So this is our creditors ledger. This has been prepared by us. On the credit side, you have to understand that Louis wholesalers is our creditor, a liability in that case. So on the credit side, this ledger will increase, and on the debit side, it will decrease. Hence, you see our invoices are on the credit side. There is a debit note there. That should worry us. That should be a mistake. And we have an invoice here, which is correct, another invoice. And we have a payment discount and an invoice. So this is in the ledger. When we come to the statement, our statement will increase on the debit and it will decrease on the credit. All right. And then you see there's a receipt and then there's a credit note there. And then there's a penalty, another penalty, and then an invoice. And then you see there's a credit note on the minus side, that is the credit side. And you see an invoice on the debit side, a receipt and a credit note. All right. And then we will then continue. It is very important that we read the bottom part of our statement, as this information will help us to answer the questions that also follow. All right. And then we are now going to go further down and see the information that relates to the errors. C reads, a comparison of the statement received from Louis wholesalers with the creditors ledger revealed the following differences. So if I am to change that us and them part, it would therefore read a comparison of the statement received from them, with the creditors ledger revealed the following differences. Money Supermarket, this is us now, okay? Us or we, all right? So we were granted an allowance of $750 for inferior quality goods received during March 2022. This transaction was not recorded by the bookkeeper of us. In other words, it sounds broken English, but you would understand that this has to do with us. Okay, so money is us. If maybe we try to have better English, then we can say we. we were granted an allowance of 750 for inferior quality goods received during March. This transaction was not recorded by the bookkeeper of money, that is us, therefore. So we have an allowance of 750 that we have not recorded. You don't see the supplier here. It is only us, we. So therefore, it means we must come to our creditors ledger. So remember, this has been prepared by us, and the statement has been prepared by them. So this is where we can then do our reconciliation. So when we come here, therefore, we'll say an allowance that has not been recorded by us will come to us here. So you come and say minus 750 because it is us and has nothing to do with them. So we come to our creditors ledger minus 750. Okay, let's come to number 2 then. It says Lawis, so we now know this is them. So maybe we can say they, and then we say they had erroneously entered the penalty for late payment twice on the 30th of March. They will correct it on the following statement. Let's go and see what has happened on the 30th of March, and it has to do with them. They entered a payment for late payment twice. So this is an error. You can see here there's 1, there's 2. One of them is correct, but the other one is wrong. So that means if they entered a penalty, this other 580 is incorrect. It is on the debit side, which is a plus. In order to correct it, we'll come here, then we say minus 580, minus 580. So we come here, we say minus 580. But you will realize that when you come to the creditors ledger, we do not have such an entry because we only realize that we were charged a penalty when we received the statement from them. Therefore, it means this 580 is a transaction that we should also record. So I'll come here, then I'll say plus 580. There we go. I will now come to information number 3, and it reads, the amount for invoice 3381 on the 3rd of April was correctly recorded in the creditors ledger account. The amount for the invoice 3381 on the 3rd of April was correctly recorded in the creditors ledger. So let's go look for invoice 3381. Invoice 3381. Invoice 3381 is for 7,800, as you can see here. And they're telling us that it is correct in the creditors ledger. When we come onto the statement, invoice 331, it's for 8,700. Therefore, we need to know how much is the difference between these two amounts. So we will now say 8.7, which is on the statement, minus the 7.8, which is in the ledger. The difference therefore becomes 900. On the statement, they have recorded 900 more on an invoice. An invoice is added in the statement, hence you see it on the debit side, the plus. So once there is an amount that is overstated, the correction therefore would be to subtract that amount. So I will come on to my statement and I will say minus 900, minus 900. That is how I would correct that error. Let's go to the next one. The next one, therefore, is number 4, because remember, we have done this one. So we come to number 4. Let's hear what number 4 says. An incorrect posting of the returns on the 8th of April was noted. An incorrect posting on the 8th of April for returns was noted. We are not told whether the incorrect posting is in the ledger or on the statement. Let's go and see. Let's start first in the ledger. In the ledger on the 8th incorrect posting, we see here we have a debit note. A debit note must be on the debit side of our ledger, but this debit note is on the credit side. So this is an incorrect posting. All right, debit note 149 on the 8th. So if we come here, it's a credit note. It is on the right side because it is on the credit side, which is a minus. So the error is in the ledger whereby our debit note has been credited, yet the debit note must be debited so that it decreases this account. Once an amount is posted on the wrong side, but in the right account, we have to put it on the correct side, but twice the amount. So we then come and we will say, in the ledger, I will therefore come and say minus 640 minus 640. Someone would have just said, why not just subtract 1,280? That is very correct. You could have just subtracted 1,280, which is 640 plus 640. So you'd have just said minus 1,280. Very correct. All right. So I'll move on to the next one. And the next one then reads, invoice BB55 in the creditors ledger account was for goods purchased from a different supplier with suppliers. Okay, let's go look for invoice BB55. Was for goods purchased from a different supplier. Okay, so when we look for invoice BB55, we find it in the ledger. We find it in the ledger here. All right, we don't find it in the statement. So they're telling us that this is for goods purchased from another supplier. So we've incorrectly recorded an invoice that relates to another supplier in the account of Lewis Wholesalers. That means we need to take it out. So we'll come here, then we say minus 11,400. That is an invoice that was incorrectly recorded. Let's go on to the next one then. And the next one is on the 6th. Invoice 3886 on the statement included VAT at 15%. All the goods. This invoice was zero rated products. Lewis Wholesalers will correct this on the next statement. Okay, so we have goods here that are not supposed to be charged VAT. However, they have been recorded with an amount that includes VAT. Let us see. So if we come, we will see that the invoice 3886, here we have 14,720 on the statement. All right. And then if we come to our ledger, we see the invoice is 12,800. So therefore, they have included a VAT amount on this invoice. So getting the difference then would be an easy way to get the amount that they incorrectly recorded. All right. Just getting the difference between these two amounts will indicate the VAT amount that they have incorrectly added onto these goods that are not supposed to be recorded VAT on. So if I would come, then I would say 14,720, 14,720, then I would therefore minus 12,800. If I say minus 12.8, this would therefore give me 1,920. This is the amount that was incorrectly recorded on the statement, because you can see the amount in the statement is more. So I need to reduce the 1,920. So I'll come in and I'll say minus 1,920. I have therefore decreased that particular amount. When we go on to the next one then reads, that is, okay, we have done this one. So we come now to this particular one, and it reads, the bookkeeper of us, that is our bookkeeper, recorded a 10% discount with the payment of EFT 425. Lewis, that is they, indicated that the discount was not approved. So we recorded a discount that they did not approve. That means we are wrong in this case. Let's go and see on EFT 425, On EFT 425, we paid 14,620, 14,620. They also have it. We recorded a discount of 1,250. However, they do not have that discount. And they're telling us that that discount was not granted. So that means we need to correct this discount that we had recorded, to reverse it. And we had subtracted the 1,250. So the correction, therefore, would be to say plus 1,250. Okay, let's go on to the next one, as we are now slightly behind time. So the next one reads, a credit note A88 on the statement received does not relate to us. Money is us. This will be recorded on the next statement. So it's a credit note of A88 on the statement. it does not relate to us. Let's go look for it. A88, the credit note of 3,180, it does not relate to us. And you'd understand that we had subtracted this amount. They had subtracted this amount on their statement. So to correct that would come, then we say plus 3180. Let's now see if there is more information. We are then told on the last information, the statement is received on the 26th of each month. On the 26th of each month. However, we realize that there is a transaction on the 29th in the ledger, and we are told the statement is received on the 26th. They're simply trying to tell us, by the time we received the statement, there is a transaction that took place after the statement was received, but in the same month of April, that must therefore be recorded. So we have an invoice of 9,000, which will now bring to our statement. So we say plus 9,900 plus 9,900. Okay, so we therefore add everything on the ledger. It will give us 56,270, and then we add everything on the statement. That also gives us 56,270. This is how I would approach the creditors reconciliation. There could be other ways of doing it, and they would still be very correct. This is how I would have approached this creditors reconciliation.